You are now tuned in to the Property Management Show with your host, Alex Osanenko. We bring in the experts of today so you can be the master of tomorrow in all things property management. Whether it's getting more doors, running a profitable fee-based business, or by simply being the best property manager. So, grab a pen and paper because this episode is sure to be a good one. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Boys and girls, welcome to the Property Management Show. You may be walking your dog right now, or you may be, watching the video. And if you are going to be delighted by my guest because her name is Lisa Wise and she runs a company called Nest DC. Lisa, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, that's awesome. And so Lisa, and I had done this in the past, but it's been a few years now since we've caught up and talked again. She spoke at the PM Growth Summit, the inaugural 2017. And she's going to speak again in 2019. So those of you who have not bought your tickets or are curious, go to pmgrowthsummit.com. It's a conference for property management entrepreneurs who listen to this podcast and, who are looking to improve their business and the outcome and their life in the process. And so Lisa and I will attempt to help you with that today. This is part of the How I Did It series, and I put quotation marks here because I want to interview successful entrepreneurs, and specifically I want to point out, and we've done this with Melissa Prandy, we've done this with Stephanie Gordon, and now Lisa Wise is here to just say, like, look, everybody makes mistakes, so let's see if we can unpack some of these mistakes, learn from them together, and make our businesses better. And so that's kind of the point of this particular series. And I'll tell you, I just came back from a NARPM national conference in San Diego, and I can't tell you how emotional I get when people that I don't know come up to me, shake my hand and said, Alex, I just want to say thank you for the podcast. It changed my business, really helped me out. And they provide feedback and offer different guest ideas. And that to me is the biggest reward for doing this. Like by far, if I changed one person's business or life and in a good way, this whole thing is worth it. So Lisa, we're doing a good thing here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me again. Happy
Awesome.
to do it.
Very, really cool. So, all right, let's dive right in because I'm not going to, let's start with kind of where you are. So before we walk through your success story and failure story, can you kind of give us an idea of where you are right now as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a property management company?
Yeah. Well, we're in a really exciting phase right now. Nest DC is just about 6 months out from turning 10, which, it was, I think people talk about parenting and they, they're little for so long and then suddenly they're teenagers. I kind of feel like Nest is in that parenting space where I'm not sure where the last 5 years went, but when we look at the year-over-year growth and how far we've come, I'm really happy with kind of the status of things and where things stand for us right now. But we're also looking at, okay, we went from being kind of the new kid on the block with the sort of novel marketing plan and novel approach to doing business. And now we're pretty established. We're more than pretty established. We're probably one of the largest management companies in the city for single family rentals. And so we're thinking about, what does that next iteration of our work look like? How do we build on our reputation and the traction that we have in the community, introduce some new income streams and potential products. And I think, it's that energy that keeps the staff pretty engaged and motivated and excited about coming back to work instead of the slog of sort of one overflowing toilet at a time is pretty hard to come back to work for. So it's that growth mode that I think has always been pretty inspirational and exciting for the staff. We also have a sister company, which is Roost DC, and launched our third, which does association management and building management, condo buildings. And then this last year, we launched our third brand, which is Starling DC, which does turnover work and some light construction work. So, it's been, even though Nest is turning 10, we're kind of always in startup phase and always learning one lesson after another and not always learning from our previous mistakes, but doing our best to do so.
Right. Gotcha. Would it be fair to say, just to qualify kind of the stage you're in turning 10 years old, you over 3 million in revenue? Would that be?
Yeah.
Okay. So good.
Yeah.
Have you done, and this is a side question, we've done this and we find tremendous advantage in doing this. Have you done something like Inc. 5000, fastest growing company? Have you done any
Yes,
of those?
we did, and we have placed in the Inc. 5000, which was a big win for us. There's also, a point at which you can't have hockey stick growth because your portfolio is too big. So I think, we were in a sweet spot where our growth was pretty accelerated, because going from 100 to 200 properties, that growth uh, math is pretty inspiring, but you can't go from 800 to 1600 in a year. So it's, it becomes it becomes unsustainable to sort of place on those lists year after year when you're leveling out in terms of sustainability and that year over year growth.
And you're absolutely right. And as you said, like if you are like, because my business, look, I relate to everything you said. My business is going to be 8.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 2 years behind, 2 years younger than you. But you're right. What I'm seeing right now, so with 2018, we've had, number 13, I think 1336 on Inc. 5000. I think that we're definitely going to see a flatter growth curve because, as you said, we already have momentum. We have good clients. We have to take care of our existing clients. I can't just keep adding stuff.
Yes, growth for growth's sake is not a good thing. And honestly, a business that has that hockey stick growth isn't necessarily one that's sustainable or thriving. It's just one that saw a lot of growth. So I think a healthy business is one where you see, not those giant profit numbers year over year, particularly in a service-based business. It's just not, you can't do it. And you do have to take care of your core business clients and make sure that you're not, just seeking growth for the sake of it.
That's very, very, very smart. So with that, your trajectory now is you and I talked off air for a second. You're trying to get a leadership team to begin to take larger pieces off the responsibility and sort of having you elevated more as a visionary role, right? Rather than the integrator who actually has to continuously do things. Is that kind of what you want to do?
Yeah, more or less. I think I'm most motivated in creating a company and a set of products that have a lot of brand recognition and a new model for doing things that we can build on. And the day-to-day management, the business development of the day-to-day management, a lot of the systems and operational work are things that I think I've done I've been lucky and I've done a good job of building a senior team that can build on that. Instead of me having to have as much of a day-to-day role in those activities. So I think the goal has been to really kind of establish a strong strategic trajectory that's very growth-driven, but doesn't rely on that being all me. So it's like not passing the baton, but sharing it a little bit.
So I bet we have listeners, you and I, that are in a similar business age category. What is your advice? What do you think? And I want to know too. What do you think is a sustainable, healthy growth rate that both you and I and businesses in our position should strive for?
I think for an established business, so when I look at Nest DC, I'd say 15 to 20% is a pretty sweet place to be. I think, we look at and that's gross, not net, or that's net, not gross. And, if you can live in that zone, you should be both profitable and taking great care of your team. If you have a new concept like Starling DC and we do $50,000 in business 1 month, then, I don't see any reason why within 6 we should be doing $100,000 a month in business. So that's sort of a different animal at this point.
So I've been discussing and talking about the concept of growing a property management business. In fact, the diagram behind me, those of you who watch on video, is what I presented to. I have a customer only. We call it a business strategy dojo because it's a sacred training ground where we work our minds, right, on business strategy. And so this is what I put in. So look, break this down for me, or say, hey, Alex, great idea, or yeah, that doesn't work. My concept to really have a healthy, growing, and successful business, I think property management portfolio itself should be profitable and should grow, but it should also feed other businesses, which I call CBUs, which is Complementary Business Units, like rehab and maintenance, investor services. And you doing this, you already have a couple of those. CBUs bolted on. How does that strategy, are you able to maximize the value of the relationships in your portfolio through those CBUs, or they're independent companies? How do you conceptualize that?
I think we have multiple and layered strategies. And I think the most important thing to do is don't sacrifice what you're best at in order to pursue something new. So if pursuing another, CBU or tackling something that hasn't been part of your core business is appealing, don't do it at the expense of taking exceptional care of your current client base. Because I see that happen where suddenly you're like, oh, there's a shiny ribbon of, renovation and rehab. That sounds great. And oops, we weren't able to, get leasing done or getting, basic customer service needs met. So, for us, anything that we pursue can't be at the expense of or threaten or risk the core business. So, and which has always been Nest. And then I think now that Roost is more established, rolling into our fourth year of business, the same would be true. We don't want to tackle another business unit or concept and then have it be at the expense of making sure that our core business and reputation is still intact and getting better all the time. But we have looked at, each relationship that we have with a client and or a building and or a tenant is an opportunity to monetize that. And not in a way that we're like, oh, let's be predatory and sort of get as much cash as we can. What we've done is build unique and individualized relationships with people, and they trust us. So, when an owner is coming back to reoccupy a unit, having been overseas or, whatever took them away and is bringing them back, our Starling DC unit now can make sure that space is ready for them when they get back. So even though it might be sad to see someone leave the portfolio, we can have that cash flow on the way out the door. And then they come back with an exceptional experience rather than walking in the door and then like, oh, what a bummer. I had tenants here for 3 years and now I've got to, get the space polished and back up to speed. Now we can do that in-house and really monetize every aspect of that relationship. We've also done things that, while I don't think that they're not deserving of their own brand, we do offer a lot more consulting services. We've been consulting with developers as they build out different condo developments and thinking about how to proactively consider different pitfalls in construction and other kind of layout and community-based dynamics before they start delivering those units has been a great way for us to build some income. We've been doing expert witness work, which has been a really great way for us to say, hey, we've got a decade of experience. Yes, you can draw from that experience to, work on your case. And we've been doing something that is, I think, unique to our market, but not exclusive to our market, which is to do some consulting for small condo associations. So when you're in a highly dense urban environment, you'll see, and this would be true of like Los Angeles and other communities where you start to see the accessory dwelling units and things like that, where we'll have people that have converted a house into one or two or to 2 or 3 or 4 condo units. And suddenly you have a building that clearly isn't going to have the income to pay for professional management, but is very vulnerable to all of the drama that goes into sort of having shared responsibility, like the roof and the entire envelope of that building, the condo documents, all the sort of governing instruments, all the contracts and taxes and the implications of a shared ownership model when it comes to those associations. They're stuck because they don't really know how to do that well, but they don't have the resources to pay for a month-over-month manager to do it well for them. So we started basically, a fee-for-service consulting program where we help those small associations that are very unattractive to any professional management company to help them get completely set up. And it cash flows nicely for us. And then we're basically on retainer when they need something. They pay our hourly fee. And then when inevitably all of those people want to move out because you move on, in this environment, a lot of people will keep those units as rentals. Then they engage with us to manage the rentals over time. So it's just a really nice way of building those long-term relationships and actually having those relationships cash flow as well, which is what we're hoping for.
So there's a lot there. So starting with a lot of these consulting services that eventually can potentially turn into a product, right? You can productize it eventually, but maybe not. But what it does, it enriches the relationship.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of key. And I think the CBUs should not be looked at as this individual cash maximizing opportunities, although they are,
Right.
but it should be looked at as a relationship enhancement, right? And
Exactly.
that to me what they represent. And you're right. If you take your eye, and this is one of the things that this is Lisa, this is why I talk to people a lot who run maintenance companies, successful and not so much. And they always say, well, I'm really good at property management. It's really not, I can't foresee taking my eye off the property management company to be able to build out a healthy real estate sales division
Yeah.
or investor services. And my answer to that is you're just not ready to do that. And we talked about EOS a little bit, Entrepreneur Operating System, and you and I both are going through the same kind of things where I'm working on getting my leadership team to run the business.
Yeah.
Where I can come in and do things like, focus more on podcasting, focus more on PM Grow and doing things that I enjoy and give back to the community. But I think it's a stage of the business, it's maturity of the business. Yeah, if you're growing 60, 70, 80% a year, you can't go out and start building other businesses. That's irresponsible.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
So I think there are certain windows of opportunity when it makes sense to pursue those different business units. But again, you can't do it at the expense of the core business.
Gotcha. All right. So let's get back and talk about when Lisa Wise failed, when she fell down and it was not pleasant and things may have not looked really good at that point. Take me through that time, please.
I think that for us, a continuing theme has been not always having our exposures, our legal exposures identified and addressed before we're in trouble. And I think we've been lucky in terms of, not having to face a lot of, sort of lawsuits or sort of aggressive, either whether it's tenants or clients, or fair housing or regulatory or environmental issues that basically can create a vulnerability for your business. I think we pieced a lot of those systems-based kind of, they're not operational really, they're sort of back of the house, regulatory risk management based activities that are super unfun for an entrepreneur to think about and are very expensive. So I think what you do is you're like, oh, well, we can just piece it together and then it'll be fine. And then, we'll just have the highest possible integrity in the work that we do, which has always been my focus. And that integrity, I think, I still value every day. But there have certainly been points where I'm like, oh, I needed to have more insurance than I had, or my contract didn't allow for X, Y, or Z. And I had a situation in 2013 where I got hammered with a lawsuit based on a lead paint exposure, and I deserved it. Which is one of those things where you're like, in the moment I wanted to say, but I really wanted what was best for everyone, and ultimately, like, I didn't do my due diligence with the vendor to make sure that they were doing the lead abatement the way that it needed to be done. Was it the end of the world? I don't think anybody was truly at risk, but my company was at risk. So I had to detour from growing the business and offering that sort of stellar customer service so that I could deal with a conflict with with someone who I think had some valid concerns, but was also predatory, and trying to just sort of like enrich their lives with a $100,000+ lawsuit when they lived in the unit for like 3 days. So it's like, that exposure was mine to address before it became a major threat to the business. And it's hard to do that when you're an entrepreneur because you can't always anticipate who's going to come after you and when and why. But more money, more problems, and the more visibility you have as a company, the more resources you appear to have, the bigger your team, the deeper people think your pockets are when it comes to just being threatened and your willingness to say, okay, fine, I'll just give you money for something. And that's been something where I feel I wish I'd had better advisors, better attorneys, where I'd spent the money sooner than later. Instead of spending the money to fight, spending the money to protect myself.
That's such an interesting revelation for me as well. So because I'm thinking, I think of our company as a startup. Oh, we startup, we're hacking, we're hustling, this and that. But you're right. It comes and usually you're awakened by something like a large lawsuit or or a situation. So your advice is like the advice I'm unpacking from your particular description of your biggest failure is, get the attorney, spend the money, have the contracts written by qualified people. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think that, and like, don't have your friend write the contract.
Yeah.
Just, find a community like this one to ask probing questions about how you engage with the right partners for your business. So your partner might not be someone that you work with every day, but you want an attorney, and you want an accountant, and you want an insurance broker that has your long-term interests at heart, not your billable hour at heart. And I think, we take for granted that, we want to talk as fast as we can to avoid the legal bills. And I'm not saying that paying a legal bill ever feels good. It doesn't. But I do think that when you've had someone that's invested in making sure that your business is poised for strong growth without those threats, then you'll feel more, I think, poised and confident going out into the world to do your best property management work. And, at the end of the day, we're dealing with people's homes. There's a lot of risk in our business, in our industry. And I think we flirt with the idea of those conversations, but I don't think we've answered how to make sure you're protecting yourself outside of, getting insurance and having, a lot of fears every day into the world. It doesn't have to be something that bogs you down, but you do want to invest in it sooner than later.
Good advice. Good advice.
As a listener of this show, I already know you care about growing your business. You care about success. And what I'm going to tell you over the next 2 minutes may change and transform your property management business forever if you take action. I'm going to tell you a story of 2 customers who decided to upgrade their websites to a 4.5 website. The first story is about Andy Moore. He is in charge of a company called Gulf Coast Property Management, choosegulfcoast.com. He went with 4.5 website. We launched 8 months ago. Over the last 6 months, 2 quarters, his owner leads went up by 189%, which results in over $270,000 additional lifetime revenue Andy will receive from the customers gained the new website that he wouldn't have with his old website. The second story is about Jock McNeil with Alliance Property Management, alliancepm.com. Jock saw a 185% increase in his qualified owner leads over the last 6 months. In his case, it's over $300,000 in a lifetime revenue add as opposed to his old website. These are huge numbers. And if you want to play in the top echelon of the property management entrepreneurs today, you need a website and a partner that can get you there.
To learn more about our property management websites, visit 4.5.com/grow. While you're there, be sure to request your free website analysis. When you're ready to purchase, you will receive a special podcast discount of $400 off your website. Now back to the show.
So let's break down your journey into unit-based components. Promise no math. Okay. You told me like, Alex, don't make me do math. Like, got you. None. But it'd be very simple. Like I want to understand, I want to help our audience because we have people who are listening who are 0. We have people who are listening who are 1,000 plus. But I want to sort of walk through the journey and see what's the biggest challenge and biggest opportunity and how you did it. So 0 to 100. Can you take us back? Like what year was that? 0 to 100. How quickly you got there? What did you do to get there? Maybe give us a little bit of that story.
Yeah. 0 to 100 was telling everybody we're the best management company in the city, even though, it was about having confidence, right? And believing in yourself enough to get other people to believe in you. So that was the trajectory. And it was truly building a reputation, being as visible as possible, creating, an attractive brand, using every resource that was free to us, Facebook, Twitter. At that time, Instagram didn't exist, but basically, taking advantage of any networking opportunity, letting your friends know that you were in the business. One of the things that we did, because we don't do sales and we won't. It's just not, we don't feel it's the right thing for us to do. But we did go to open houses every weekend with this sort of adorable gift bag. And we would just introduce ourselves and chat with the agents and say, hey, just want to say great listing, great house, good luck. We're a new property management company in the city. You don't need to hear anything about what we've got going on now, but we might want to be on your radar at some point. And, we're still hearing from people we did that with years and years and years later. So it was a good opportunity to get free one-on-one FaceTime with their board and not wanting to have their Sunday afternoon open house. And at that time there was a recession and nobody was buying anything. So they were a very captive audience. And I'm kind of predicting that we'll have slower open houses coming up soon.
Very, very much so. Agreed.
With interest rates rising and the rest, I think we're going to start to see a little bit of a shift in how real estate agents perceive our work and vice versa. But that was really how we got to 100. It was really one unit at a time. It was being very engaged with the clients, being, a lot of just sort of really high touch work with them. And then, what we did that I think kind of got us on the map, there was a best of contest in the DC City paper. I found some trick to give people a organic tote bag if they voted for us. I don't think any property management company had ever done anything proactive in terms of marketing around that contest. And I think we had between 18 and 30 properties, and we won the best of for the city paper, awesome. Which was ridiculous because the contests are sort of irrelevant, but what they do is they create a search engine optimization trajectory.
PR, baby, PR and backlinking. Oh, that's so smart. You're right.
So people search best property management company in DC, and we came up first after that every single time. So that was really a game changer. And then every year that they held the contest, we were in the top 3. And then it became this really high stakes contest where, thousands and thousands of people are voting in the category. It actually got to be one of the biggest thorns in my side in terms of the amount of energy and time it started to take up. But it was worth it in terms of that free PR.
So you did it. Others looked at it what? She's nobody. Why is she nobody? And so it got more competitive.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But we did place top 3. Well, for all those years, and then in between those periods where we were doing that sort of the campaign, I would beg the city paper to take the category out because it was so exhausting. I'm like, this is really not helping my business in terms of time management, but it did in terms of publicity and promotion. So first 100 units, we got to 200 at that, and then we got to 100 in about 2013, 2012-ish. And then getting to 200 was a lot faster.
Sorry, just gonna stop you there for a second, because I have some other things I want to ask about the 0 to 100, because there's operation piece besides market. So marketing was brilliant. You've done really, really well. Let me just kind of sort of say couple hack strategies, Lisa Wise hacks. Go to open houses, talk to people.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And the second thing is apply for, your local newspaper best off. And we've done this, but it doesn't have to be best off. It could be other things like we've done fastest 100 companies by San Francisco Business Times. These things, it's going to cost me $800 to apply. But please, ladies and gentlemen, understand the value of that inbound link from such an authoritative website is maybe thousands of dollars, maybe tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars for you over time.
Yeah.
Spend the money.
Yeah. There's that. And then, we did the same. So we were, the Washingtonian magazine, which is a really highly respected magazine, named us a small workplace gem. So basically any chance there was for us to gain visibility that got us on the map is what we did. We also wrapped our first car, which was actually this really crappy old Mini Cooper, but it was adorable. And then we put our bird on the side of it, which was, I think, $850. And the value of that was huge. People were like, oh yeah, I see that little Mini Cooper everywhere with your bird on it. That's, what do you guys do? It was very, it was designed to intrigue people, not to necessarily drive them anywhere. So I think that started to get a buzz out for sure. And again, these are pretty low hanging fruit, affordable things that people can do that have a lot of staying power.
Gotcha. So let's spend another minute on 0 to 100, or a couple of minutes. I want to understand from operational perspectives, like who'd you have, how many people you had, who was doing all this. Walk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, for a long while, to be honest, so the idea of like who's responsible for what depended on who saw the email first or who answered the phone first. So if you answered the call that said that there was someone interested in management services, then that was your client. If you answered the phone when someone had a toilet problem, then that was your toilet to fix. So it was an everyone is all in all the time with a team-based approach, which we've certainly been able to memorialize and build on, but with a lot more refined positioning now that we've got enough staff to sort of become expert in certain things. So, that was the beginning, and I think we were almost just kind of growing out of that on the Roost side. We've definitely grown out of it on the Nest side, but yeah, if you answered the phone, it was your responsibility.
Got it.
There wasn't a
How
whole
many
lot
people?
to find out. At that stage, I think we had like 5 or 6 people.
That many? How'd you feed them?
Yeah, I think that included like field techs and some part-time people. And I didn't make a salary for many, 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 many years. So I was free.
That'd do it. Okay. So you basically gave the company everything it needs without taking away and pocketing.
Yes.
Okay. Understand. All right. So you are 100, you have 5 people, 100 properties, 100, I would say 100 to 300 or 250. Can you please take us there?
Well, that's when we needed to get a lot more serious about systems. So like no more keeping all the keys in a box. You had to have basically an organizational systems to track all the different elements of the portfolio. And at that time, we engaged with Appfolio to do our property management software. And Appfolio was new to the industry at that point as well, and cloud-based and culturally and otherwise like very aligned with our business model, and was a really good fit for us. I mean, it offered, I think, more than anything, the accounting-based platform that we were really missing. We were basically doing an Excel spreadsheet and a cover sheet for every unit's client or owner, and it was just crushing in terms of it was so tedious. We were running, and it was again one of those moments where it's like hire a really good CPA at that phase when you feel like you can't afford it is likely when you need it the most. We were just kind of getting buried under the weight of all this administrative burden because the volume was just too much. So what works at 50 units doesn't work at 100, doesn't work at 200, and then you have to keep sort of refining and rebuilding and growing and being willing to do that. And I think the good news was for us, like Appfolio is in a similar space where they're always improving on their systems and tools and software and platforms so that they can grow with their companies. If they had been a static software company and not very interested in getting better and innovating, it would have been harder for us. So, in our internal operations in terms of making sure that everybody is clear on their roles and clear on how to be successful in those roles, we needed to be clear on what we could expect from the software. And moving everything to the software and using the software well, so the software worked well for us. So it's like, the software is only as good as you are in using it. We, getting into best practices, like, put all of the vendor contacts in Appfolio, like make sure that you're working it. Was just coming up with best practices that you stuck with instead of everybody having their own side way of dealing with all of their, their roles in managing the properties. You have to create systems and those best practices and standard operating procedures to make sure that you do have consistency over the portfolio and that you're like, reducing risk. If someone leaves and they're great but they have this crazy, bizarre way of managing information and relationships and the portfolio that they're working with and the way that they're working with, and you can't replace them. So you have to have replicable approaches to managing the property and doing the work or whatever your part is in managing the property, whether that be finance or admin or operations or HR, whatever it is. It has to be something that we understand and can apply with you here or not here, which was, I think, really important for us.
Understand. So The analogy I would use is at about 150 units or so, 200 or so, you basically, if you're talking about a sand and a beach, your employees were just running around on the beach, jumping up and down, being like free to do the best work they can within the confines of endless beach.
Yes.
The Appfolio gave you the sandbox to build your best practices around.
Yeah. And I think, I think Appfolio gets better over time. I think there were a lot of things that it couldn't do for us that it can do now. So, we had a lot of systems on systems on systems. So it's sort of like, okay, well, we're going to track all of the insurance vendors for all these different, units or buildings. So we'll have Google spreadsheets with 1,000 tabs to track, all this different information. So we're able to start moving more of that over to Appfolio because they're responsive to those needs and growing over time. So we're still sometimes on the endless sandy beach with a storm coming. But I think we have better strategies around how making sure that we take cover and come up with a solution sooner than later.
Understood. So there's definitely that. Yeah. So all right. So that's when you build structure. That's when you start to build the framework for what an SDC is going to look like. What about the marketing side? 100 to 300. How long did it take you, and what did you do on the growth side?
We never changed our marketing strategy. It was always sort of more of the same, which was always working for us. So, getting our brand out there as much as possible. We did a lot of, we'll blog. We do a lot of commenting on other businesses, Facebook pages. We were still doing, the open house visits. We were participating in roundtables. We were affiliated with and participating in our professional associations. We were sponsoring different events for community organizations that we really supported. We were volunteering, anything that we could do to be visible in our community, we were doing, which we felt great about. So, and again, and building on our social media channels, which can feel time consuming and not necessarily compatible with your core business. But I think you don't get a core business unless you're really good at those things these days. So we got to 300 maybe in 2014. Yeah, I think so. I haven't actually looked at our lifeline for a little while or to see where we hit what and when, but
your timeline. Yeah. We're rebuilding our about page. I think we rebuilt it. And the timeline, I had to think about these things. Or asking me, hey, what happened? What's significant happened in 2014? I'm like, hey, let's see, what 100 things can I talk about? It's like, we just need one thing. I'm like, there's no one thing. There's not one thing does not define 2014. It's like 6 minimum.
Yes.
They try to narrow me down to one.
Yeah.
So that's the 300. Okay. And beyond that, 300 to 500. Now 500 is already a company with 12 employees or so, maybe more, depending on how you run it. And so what was the most significant part of that transition? How things changed? What have you done to make this business to continue to grow and be successful?
Yeah, departmentalizing was something that we did that I think worked really well, is sort of creating more structure around our finance work, creating more structure around our leasing team, and then the maintenance team. I think getting a lot more clarity around how all those departments worked and building on them. And continually, investing in training people. We focused a lot on making sure that we increased salaries and focused a lot on culture for our internal culture and making sure that we had staffing longevity and, people that were really invested in being here and that the values of the company were aligned with their own personal values. And I think that's what I think, helped us grow. We had the tools in place. We had to rethink the way we were using the tools sometimes. So I think, every year we'll kind of take a giant step backwards and say, how can we fine tune what we're doing or stop doing some of the things that we're doing? And one of the things that we talk a lot about is internally when we meet as a staff is, if there's something that you do that you don't like doing, study it and ask yourself if there's a better way of doing it, a faster way of doing it, or even if you have to do it at all. And we found a lot of things we were doing were not necessary. They'd just become part of the fabric of the company. And there was a lot we could edit out and a lot we could streamline. And part of that was also taking advantage of the innovations that were sort of all around us. that Appfolio was letting us use. And that part of that was doing our marketing, a lot of our marketing through Appfolio, which we had shied away from for a long time because Appfolio was heavily branding all the marketing, and that's just not it's just not our vibe is to sort of co-brand anything. They don't do that anymore. So now we're able to push out our listings on different channels really seamlessly and quickly without as much work, but yet with our brand and culture intact. So it's a lot about saying, like, how are we most efficient? How are we delivering the best possible service and product without, killing ourselves? And that's where I think we're able to get to the point of a scalable growth.
That's very, this I haven't heard before. So I mean, I have in bits and pieces, but this sort of what you're articulating to me is this overarching sort of focus on brand, and even your comment about not having to like co-brand with, because it's your responsibility to fill the units with the quality tenants. You don't want somebody else's name attached to it as a writer, right, on your own train. And that to me is, I think people pay a lot less attention to brand and don't do things locally as well, to integrate themselves in the community so deeply that anybody thinks property management, it's them. Like, there's only one other company I know that does it really, really well. It's called Dotson Property Management. They're in Virginia. I don't know if you know Duke Dotson. They're doing a lot of this interesting stuff. Have you thought about starting a local podcast?
I have blogging and podcasting in my 2020 strategic plan.
That's awesome. That's
yeah.
good.
Yeah. We participate in a lot of, conversations like this one locally. So we'll do a lot of, podcasts and interviews and conversations and roundtables and things like that. So in terms of our culture and our business model, we're definitely getting visibility for that. But we're not necessarily generating it, which I think is on the list of things that we want to do more of.
How does a company, so I'm presuming you're over 1,000 properties. If you want to correct me or say what it is, but how does 500, being at 500, if you take yourself back, 500, what was it, like 2000, I don't know, 16 or something. How does that compare to where you are now? Like, is this a big leap, or is this essentially a same company with incremental changes over that period of time to get to 1,000 plus?
And that's where the leadership piece comes into play. So I needed more leadership, stronger leaders. I needed them to have the gravitas and the passion and the enthusiasm for the growth of the business in order for us to have just more people for the staff to look up to and get guidance from. So that's when we started to really heavily invest in having just a larger senior pool of people that were responsible for things, which I think does a nice job of making sure that we're protected, and that everybody sort of has we want people to have a high quality of life when they're on the team. You can't just add volume and crush people. So like finding out how to create sustainable business staffing models was essential. And I can't have staff on staff without a really strong set of leaders and managers to make sure that they're doing their best work, and with the highest level of satisfaction. So it was a leadership question at that point, less so a systems question, because we knew we could refine systems and get better at our work. But we needed decision makers and people that were willing to exercise a power position to make sure it got executed well. And I think that has been a 2-year iterative process that we'll continue with, that we're getting better at all the time. But that, I think, was what had to happen in order for us to truly scale.
Yeah, got it. I'm sending you the Traction book. Hopefully that'll help. I'm going through the same thing, and this is it. I like this stage of the business. I like it very much, but it's also a little bit scary because as an entrepreneur, you're like, am I the crucial piece of this business? Yes, I am. Do I have everything in my head? Yes, I do. Do I want people, continue to depend on me? Maybe I do, because I have I've built this thing, but I'm learning to not think that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think, all of these entrepreneur organizations will say, you can't work as much in your business, you have to work on it. And that does require a little bit of a leap of faith and helping to sort of deputize, your strongest staff members around you to make sure that they have opportunity, that they're building their leadership, that you really shouldn't be the one that can do everything. Then you can only be as good as your own ego, and the time that you have available. So, if you really want to get to significant scalable growth, you have to have a team around you that's interested in the same things. And you might not be even, you shouldn't be as good at it as they are. I don't know how to lease property anymore. And I feel great about that. I don't know how we push out our listings. I don't know how we check applications. I don't know what the timeline is for things. I don't know how we contact the person that's, responsible for the vacancies. Like, I don't know any of that. And it's better for the company if I don't, because if I'm focused on that step, then I'm not focusing on our growth. I'm not focusing on our next brand. I'm not focusing on, how we're going to create basically, thought leadership in this field. I'll be freaking out about why the keys weren't in the lockbox. And everyone should lose sleep over that, but I shouldn't be the one responsible for that.
Yeah. There's gotta be accountability on your leadership team, and from there accountability sort of boils down. So let me poke something at you. There's a couple of things I found. Like I'm going to start poking things at my guests just because I think you will appreciate it, even though it may be a little bit painful. I do not like your 3.5-star reputation all of a sudden. What is going on, and what are you doing about it?
We have a reputation committee that we've established in-house. The 3.5-star reputation piece is rough because if you aggregate all of our reviews, we'd be 5 stars. So it's the filtered reviews that's a big problem for us. And, I think we probably have 80 something reviews all told, and about 70 of those are in the 5-star range or 4-star range. And then you've got a handful that are just going to crush you if those are the only ones that are getting factored into the star rating. It's a sort of an infuriating reality. It's not that it goes without our attention, but there's also the reality that, sometimes you have to just focus on your work and doing the best work that you can. I don't know that there's a magic bullet. I know that it will be a high priority for us in 2019. So, and that we've made some key investments, in our sort of back of the house, partnering with the front of the house to see if we can turn that around. But, we've done the math. I can generate 35 5-star reviews, and usually 2 to 3 will show up in the review formula. I don't really know how to do
Yelp
that.
though, right? Yelp. Google does not do that as viciously yet.
I mean, Google's its own thing, and actually that's much lower hanging fruit. And we should be at 4.5 because that's easy because they're not filtering. Facebook, we're in a better shape for, and we're in the 4s for both companies. But yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir when I
Understood. But so I was surprised because I didn't expect NSDC to get there, to be at that like mediocrity. You're not a mediocre company. Be bad or be good. Don't be in the middle, right? But so here's a piece advice that we've deployed over the years that works like a charm at all times. Most of your customers are happy. You know that. I know that. Most of your tenants and most of your owners, 99% are happy. People who don't get into the unit because for whatever reason, will slam you on Yelp and I'll stick, right? People who actually give you a good review won't stick. But it's not, your whole thing is, it's identifying the trigger, the touch points, right? The triggers, we call it triggers, where you touch the client, whether it's a move in for a tenant, a move out, be brave, survey on a move out. When you place a tenant for the owner, anything significant when maintenance is completed. So there's like 4 or 5 of these key touch points that your committee can identify and basically aggregate number of touches. It'll probably be at least 1,000 touches every quarter, or maybe let's say 300, maybe 1,000 touches a month, depending on how big your portfolio is, and execute it against those. And so you assign specific. So let's say the maintenance person gets to survey people on a maintenance trigger, right? So isolate the triggers, put it on a whiteboard, then assign the trigger work to people and give them a scorecard and track it. And you, like, in 3 months, you will blow up.
Yeah, we do that actually.
Okay.
So we have a survey system. It goes out to people like just after move in, just after move out, and just after every maintenance activity. The trick is finding the time to get back to each person and say, thanks for 5 stars, thanks for 3 stars. What can we do differently? So we're actively engaged in that and tracking the experience. We need to follow up on the experience. So, that is precisely what our, next quarter approach is establishing the systems to sort of get to the last, the 6th touch, right? If it's so that we can get people to be more vocal about the good experience that they had. And we do know that, 90% of our move outs are 5 stars. That's an exceptional track record, but we're not doubling back and saying, thanks for the 5 stars. Can you generate that on Yelp? So, and AppFolio has a really great survey tool that we can use, which has just been out, I think, for the last year or so. So now it's a matter of taking that tool and leveraging it and finessing it so that it can work for us. But I think you're absolutely right. It's a matter of, looping back and making sure that you've delivered on the experience, and that if there is an opportunity for that feedback, then people are invited to give it.
Yeah. And so I think that falls on you and your team to follow up. If you already have those survey results, that like the program we run, it automates that connection between 5 stars versus going on Google, giving you 5-star feedback and then going on Google and doing it. There's compelling reasons. You can compel people to just like, hey, this would really help us out. We work very hard in this company. Property management is not always a thankful business. And we're proud to deliver the service to you. Could you please help us out? Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Well, unless you're Yelp, and then Yelp says you can't do it. Right?
Oh yeah. I'm talking Google. Yelp, 3.5 stars on Yelp is not all that bad.
No, it's not. It's the Google, and Google. Honestly, I just kind of keep. Yeah, you're right.
That's it. So that's enough. I don't want to poke at you too much, but you get it. It's a little bit of a pain point. You solving it, and the PM Grow Summit. We all going to go and check nestdc.com reputation, and it's going to be what, 4.5 stars?
Sure, I think we can get there.
Okay, that's.
If Google's your measuring stick, then sure, we'll get there.
Yeah, let's do Google. Yelp is going to be Yelp. You have to have 100 reviews for one to stick.
Yeah, well, which is sort of where but that to be honest, like I never have anyone mention our Google reviews. I've never had a single person mention them until this conversation. People only talk about Yelp. They'll quote Yelp reviews back to me when I go to a sales meeting. Like that is what people are paying attention to, which is generally why we're like, oh my God, I can generate 25 reviews for one to stick. And then you feel irritated that, and honestly, most people don't think about doing the Yelp reviews as much. What will happen is one person will be mad and then they'll hit all the channels and then blast you wherever they can, which is why Google is sort of this like, that's why we actually have that problem with Google. But the people that we're trying to generate positive reviews from, you get them to Yelp, they get filtered, and then those people haven't gotten to Facebook or Google yet. But the cranky people will go everywhere, all the time, and they stick. So
and we know that. Look, Yelp just sent us a cease and desist. They've launched their AdWords campaign similar, and they've had agencies because they didn't have traction enough. So they figured, let's get agencies to do that work for us and sell for us. And so we had a few test clients and blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, like in property management, I don't want to get into too much of this, and we ran out of time. I want to respect your time as well. But look, if you don't ask in property management, you don't get, period.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's not a sausage, it's not a steak. It's not it's not grass.
At the end of the day, it's really, it's hard. It's not an appropriate channel.
So because we had reputation.com relationship, and they perceive reputation.com as a malicious, like reputation.com, breaks all the Yelp guidelines and what have you. So they've sent us, and so we're no longer doing business with Yelp. Well, fine with me. That's how they treat their partners and whatever. So I have no love lost for Yelp. But at the same time, the reason why, Lisa, I just want to end on this. The reason why you hear a lot about Yelp, because Yelp is one of those very popular search engines, and people will check you out. What's happening with your Google reviews, why you don't hear about them, is because they're causing a break in conversion for you. In other words, if you look for Washington, D.C. property management, there's 3 or 4 people placed on pins. Yours is the lowest review. So basically, you're just not getting that click, and therefore you're not getting the comment because somebody clicks on somebody that is higher reviews, and it's just you're missing on the conversion.
Yeah, no, that's really great. That's a great point.
All right, so I'm gonna have you gotta feed your dog, and I'm gonna go and do other things as well. I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, thank you. Of course, always happy to chat with you, Alex. Anytime.
Look forward to seeing you at the PM Grow Summit. I wish you all the best,
Awesome.
and be well. And I hope you and I talk about your leadership team, and things are gonna be in a better space next time.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day. Okay.
You as well. All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye.